Hello and welcome to 3 Minute Gaming. I'm Nathan, and today I'm going to tell you if this game's worth their time and bandwidth. Today's game is Sonic Origins Plus. 4 classic Sonic games plus a bunch of Game Gear ones arrive in yet another release of these Genesis Sonic games. But is this the best version yet? Let's find out. Sonic Origins Plus is a collection of the 4 core Genesis Sonic games with improvements, changes, and some new systems to help modernize them and merit the re-release. And if you get the Plus version, you get a bunch of Game Gear games with shoddy emulation and a new playable character. We'll get to that later. At some point, I might give each of these individual games larger reviews, but let's cover them in brief. Sonic 1 was a landmark game that put Sega on the map as an actual competitor with Nintendo in the 90s. Age hasn't been nice to this one, however, as looking back, it feels more like a prototype for the better games that would become its sequels, as this one has a lot of odd design choices and some very strange level design, particularly in its second half. Still, I found it to be fun enough, and the soundtrack absolutely slaps, so it's worth checking out despite its flaws. Sonic 2 is where the series really took off, taking the groundwork from Sonic 1 and improving it in nearly every way. Levels were designed more around the upper and lower route concept, and giving players rewards for keeping good momentum and quick reaction times. It does suffer in its later half, however, with levels after Oil Ocean being less well designed, as well as having a very frustrating final boss. But regardless, Sonic 2 is still quite fun. Sonic CD is probably the most polarizing 2D game in the franchise, and for me it's an example of a game that was probably too ambitious for its time. While it has less levels and the game can be beaten in like 45 minutes if you ignore the time travel mechanic, that mechanic is the main gimmick, as you can travel back in time in the same level to beat Robotnik, then go to the future to see how things have changed. Its aesthetic is kind of a mess though, and the level design is all over the place, making it unique but definitely an odd duck. Sonic 3 and Knuckles is finally back, and this one's the real deal, taking everything from Sonic 2 and improving it further with incredible visuals, some of the best designed levels in the franchise, and adding Knuckles to the mix. I really don't have much bad to say about Sonic 3. Even today, I think it holds up incredibly well, except this collection swapped out some of the songs due to copyright reasons. The big improvement across all of these games is that they are finally presented in native widescreen, which is actually a massive help considering how seeing most of the screen helps you react better, as well as letting you play as any character in any game. And lastly, you have unlimited lives, which I think is smart for all modern 2D platformers. Rather than lives, you now earn coins which can be used to buy extras in the gallery, and honestly, that's the collection. It's just these core Genesis games with widescreen support, smooth frame rates, a few minor improvements, and a big gallery full of stuff to unlock. So what I like about Sonic Origins Plus? Well, while it was pretty rough on launch, the emulation / recreation of these games is now pretty fantastic, with those previously mentioned improvements of widescreen support and infinite lives that make playing through them today a lot more fun. Additionally, I love the extras here. I am a big sucker for gallery stuff like concept art, advertising, etc., and there's a ton of it here to explore and dig into. And lastly, I do think these games hold up. Sonic 2 and 3 are nearly timeless in their quality, and this version is a great way to introduce newcomers to these classic games without compromising on their difficulty. When it comes to the bad, there really should have been more to this, considering how often they re-release these games. It doesn't even have all the Genesis Sonic games like Sonic Spinball, Mean Bean Machine, or Sonic 3D Blast. Additionally, the changed music in Sonic 3 really sucks, but I cannot fathom how Sega can't just write a massive check to get the classic music back in one of the biggest games in their biggest franchise. And lastly, the Plus upgrade in my mind is absolutely not worth it. Amy is basically just a slightly better Sonic, and as mentioned, the Game Gear games, while a nice inclusion, have big emulation problems and don't tie into any of the gallery unlocks or progressions at all. As you know, our games here on a 3-point scale, must play, maybe consider, and don't bother. And Sega re-releases these games so often, it's really hard whether to recommend this particular version or not, but I will say this. As a longtime fan of all of these games, for me, I found the combination of infinite lives and widescreen support more than enough to make this my go-to when it comes to replaying these games in the future. While some of the improvements are superfluous, and I wish the collection had more games in it, if you want a modern feeling version of these classic games, this is probably the best you can get outside of ROM hacking or something. That's all I have for today. Thank you so much for watching. Have you played Sonic Origins collection? Do you like these classic games? Please let me know in the comments. But regardless, go out there and check these ones out.